Most people think that when life really changes, they'll know. Like there will be this clear, undeniable moment where everything clicks and they can finally say, okay, this is it. This is where things turn around. They imagine some kind of internal confirmation, a rush, a deep emotional hit, something strong enough that there's no doubt left. And honestly, that idea makes sense. We're surrounded by stories that teach us to expect transformation to be loud. Big moments, clear turning points, before and after scenes that feel dramatic enough to mark the shift. But if you look at your own life closely, not the version you tell people, but the version you actually lived, the changes that mattered most probably didn't arrive like that at all. They came quietly. So quietly, in fact, that at the time, you might not have even noticed anything was changing. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Real shifts rarely feel impressive while they're happening. They don't come with a feeling that says, pay attention, this is important. Life just keeps going. You keep waking up. You keep doing normal things. And because everything looks the same on the surface, the mind assumes nothing is happening underneath. But something is. The shift happens quietly, and that quietness isn't a flaw. It's the signal. Think about it for a moment. Think about the moments in your life where something truly ended or truly began. Not the dramatic ones you planned for, but the real ones. The day you stopped chasing someone who never showed up for you. The moment a habit lost its grip without a big decision. The season where your priorities changed, not because you forced them to, but because the old ones just stopped making sense. At the time, those moments probably felt ordinary, maybe even underwhelming. No big emotional release, no sense of accomplishment. Just a subtle internal shift that you didn't know how to name yet. And later, much later, you realized how big it actually was. We're conditioned to believe that growth should feel intense, that change should hurt, or excite us, or at least feel obvious. So when something starts to shift and it feels calm, we get suspicious. We assume we're stuck. We assume we're losing motivation. We assume we're doing something wrong. But calm doesn't mean nothing is happening. Calm often means you're no longer fighting yourself. Real change doesn't arrive like a shock to the system. It doesn't flip a switch overnight. It settles in slowly. It blends, like a crossfade instead of a jump cut. Your old reality doesn't disappear all at once. It just starts to lose relevance. You still think some of the same thoughts, but they don't carry the same emotional weight. You still face similar situations, but you respond differently without trying to. You still recognize the old patterns, but they don't pull you in the way they used to. And because there's no dramatic contrast, you underestimate what's happening. The mind wants a moment it can point to, a story it can tell. It wants to say, this is when I changed. But real change doesn't give the mind that satisfaction. There's no timestamp, no announcement. Instead, there's an absence. An absence of urgency, an absence of emotional charge, an absence of the constant need to fix yourself. At first, that absence can feel uncomfortable. If you've lived in survival mode for a long time, intensity feels normal. Overthinking feels normal. Constant self-monitoring feels normal. So when that noise starts to quiet down, the silence feels strange. Almost wrong, like something is missing. And technically, something is missing. The inner tension, the pressure, the feeling that you're always slightly behind where you should be. When that starts to dissolve, the mind doesn't celebrate. It panics. It looks for problems. It starts asking questions like, why don't I care as much? Or, why doesn't this feel exciting? Or, if this were real, wouldn't I feel more motivated? But what if motivation was never the proof? What if the proof is how little effort it takes now? One of the most confusing things about a real shift is that it doesn't feel like becoming someone new. It feels like stopping. Like you're no longer pushing, no longer forcing, no longer holding everything together through effort. It's not an upgrade, it's a release. And release doesn't feel heroic. It feels natural. Almost anticlimactic. You don't wake up feeling powerful. You wake up feeling steady. You don't feel inspired to change your whole life. You just move through your day with less resistance. Decisions feel simpler. Boundaries feel quieter. You don't rehearse conversations in your head as much. You don't argue with yourself as often. And because there's no internal drama, you wonder if you're doing enough. This is where a lot of people get lost. They confuse struggle with progress. They think that if they're not pushing, they must be falling behind. So they try to recreate intensity. They look for something to chase again, something to fix, something to prove. But real alignment doesn't need to be proven. When the shift is real, you stop trying to convince yourself. You're not repeating affirmations to feel okay. You're not forcing positive thoughts. You're not checking every feeling to see if it means something. You just act. You say no without explaining yourself. You walk away without needing closure. You choose differently without making a big deal out of it. And the strange thing is, you don't feel proud of these moments. You don't even register them as growth. They feel obvious, like, of course I'd do that. And because they feel obvious, you underestimate how different you've become. That's one of the clearest signs the shift is real. You stop narrating your life. When change is forced or temporary, there's a lot of talking, a lot of explaining, a lot of "this is who I am now." But when it's real, there's nothing to announce. You don't need to label it. You don't need anyone to validate it. You're too busy living from it. Another thing no one really prepares you for is how neutral real change feels. Not happy, not sad. Just grounded. And if you're used to emotional highs and lows, that neutrality can feel empty. The mind calls it boredom or numbness, but most of the time it's neither. It's peace without fireworks. Peace doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't excite the ego. It doesn't create a story. It just exists quietly in the background. Stable enough to hold you. And because it's unfamiliar, many people mistake it for a problem. They think something is missing, but what's missing is the chaos. And the ego doesn't like that. The ego thrives on movement, comparison, urgency. So when life becomes quieter, it tries to pull you back into old loops. Old worries, old desires, old fears. Not because they're real, but because they're familiar. If you don't follow that pull, something interesting happens. You realize you don't need to think your way forward anymore. You don't need to analyze every step. You don't need to have everything figured out. You just respond to what's in front of you. And that's when the shift starts to feel irreversible. Not because you made a dramatic decision, but because the old way no longer fits. You could technically go back to it, but it would feel forced. Like pretending, like wearing clothes that don't belong to you anymore. This is the difference between fake shifts and real ones. Fake shifts are intense and unstable. They come with big emotions and bold declarations. They need constant reinforcement. They make you talk about change more than you live it. Real shifts are subtle and steady. They don't need maintenance. They don't need reminders. They don't collapse when life gets uncomfortable. If you have to keep telling yourself that you've changed, you haven't yet. When the shift is real, you forget to think about it. And most of the time, you only recognize it in hindsight. Weeks pass, months pass, and then something happens. A situation that would have completely thrown you before. A comment that would have stuck with you for days. A dynamic that used to drain you. And you notice, nothing happens. No reaction, no spiral, no emotional charge. You pause, almost waiting for the old response to show up. And when it doesn't, that's when it hits you. Not as a dramatic realization, but as a quiet observation. Oh, I don't live there anymore. There's no celebration in that moment, no sense of achievement. Just clarity. That's when you realize the shift already happened. Quietly, gradually, without asking for permission. So if you're waiting for a moment where everything suddenly feels different, where you finally feel ready or confident or certain, you might be waiting for the wrong signal. The real shift doesn't make you feel ready. It makes you feel settled. It doesn't push you forward, it grounds you where you are. And when it's real, you won't feel like you've transformed into someone else. You'll feel like you've stopped trying to be someone you were never meant to be. So instead of asking when your life will change, ask something else. What no longer feels heavy? What no longer pulls you emotionally? What no longer needs effort to resist? Those quiet absences are the evidence. And if this feels familiar to you, if something in this feels strangely accurate, it's not because you're about to shift. It's because in some small and quiet way, you already have.